So how do organisms obtain energy? You remember that our discussion of energy and energy being the ability to do work. Also remembering that all living things need energy in order to maintain a state of low entropy. So without the input of energy, things tend to go towards more disorder or high entropy. So in order to create order, we have to use energy. So we could talk about the different way organisms do this. We have one type of organism that is referred to as an autotroph, or a group of organisms that are autotrophs. And when I look at this word, auto means self, troph in this case is like feeding. You might hear of a trophic web or a trophic chain or a trophic cascade. And so this has to do with feeding. So autotrophs are those organisms that are capable of photosynthesis. So when I look at this word, photo means light, and synthesis means to build molecules. So when we look at the chemical reaction for photosynthesis, we can show a balanced chemical formula where we have carbon dioxide. So we have 6 CO2 plus 6 water. Where is the CO2 found? That is carbon dioxide. That is in our atmosphere. That is in our air. The water and the carbon dioxide, we have to break those molecules. So this is not a spontaneous process. This takes light. So I'm going to put light here. So that's the light energy. It's a form of kinetic energy that is then converted into chemical energy. So we have C6H12O6 plus 6 oxygen. So what is this molecule right here? This is glucose. This is a carbohydrate. You'll notice that it has 6 carbon, 12 hydrogen, and 6 oxygen. And you'll notice that the byproduct of photosynthesis is oxygen. So it is true when we say that the trees breathe out oxygen so that we can breathe that oxygen in. So this is an example of photosynthesis. Now, not all organisms can or are capable of photosynthesis, like, for example, we are not. So we are considered to be a heterotroph. So heterotrophs, hetero like heterosexual, means other. So this is other feeding. This is not self-feeding. And so this means that we must obtain energy from other organisms. And we could obtain that energy from plants, like if we are herbivorous. So we could say some organisms are strictly herbivorous, which means that they eat plants. Some organisms are carnivorous, like spiders. And interestingly, even jellyfish are carnivorous. And then we have some organisms that do both, and so they are said to be omnivorous. And then there are other examples like nectivorous. What do you think nectivorous means? This would be like if you were going to drink the nectar. So if we're talking about butterflies, they are nectivorous. Okay. So this is the way that these organisms obtain energy, but they have to convert it into a usable form. And so this conversion is essentially the reverse of photosynthesis. It's really cool. So we have a process that is referred to as cellular respiration. So if we look at cellular respiration, and it's important to note that even plants like autotrophs are capable of cellular respiration. So this is where we take glucose. So we have glucose. I'll do the chemical formula for you. C6H12O6 plus oxygen. Why do we need oxygen? This is what is occurring inside of our cells. And so it's really cool because it's almost like a combustion. Remember, we talked about propane and how propane can be broken down in the presence of oxygen to produce energy. But in this case, the combustion, the breaking apart of the molecular bonds, is tightly controlled. And it actually drives little cellular pumps inside of our mitochondria that then produce a form of energy called ATP. So we have this chemical reaction, which then produces carbon dioxide. We breathe out carbon dioxide. We also get water from this chemical reaction, and we get a type of molecule that is called ATP. It is kind of related to our DNA in that it is a nucleic acid, but it has a high energy bond. It's called, you don't need to know this, but it's called adenosine triphosphate. And ATP can be broken down. We can remove a phosphate group, and then we can use that energy to maintain our constant internal environment. In the case of mammals, for example, maintaining our body temperature, maintaining our respiration, maintaining our blood pressure, maintaining our even the internal environment of each and every cell in our body. So we require this energy. Otherwise, we go to a state of disorder, and that is what happens upon death. So this is cellular respiration. Cellular respiration, you notice, is kind of the reverse of photosynthesis. And so these two chemical reactions are really important in what we call the carbon cycle. So carbon cycles in through our bodies. So say, for example, we could talk about a plant taking carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and incorporating it into its tissues. Then we eat that plant, and we could take that carbon and incorporate it into our bodies, right? Or we could also breathe it back out. And so we have a recycling of these atoms. Remember that they are fundamentally elements that cannot be broken down any further. So carbon cannot be, the carbon atom cannot be broken down. And all carbon atoms have pretty much identical a subatomic composition. Okay, so that would be the generally the two different types of organisms would be these that are autotrophs and these that are heterotrophs. Some animals actually can become photosynthetic by obtaining algae inside of their tissues. A good example of this that's super important to our ocean ecosystems is coral. So coral are animals that becomes photosynthetic because they have special algae inside of their cells that is capable of photosynthesis. And so they have this symbiosis, these organisms living inside of them. And this is what allows them to produce reefs. So the coral are able to deposit calcium carbonate, and the reefs are produced, and they can elevate the organisms up so that they are always in a shallow sea and close to the sunlight. So that is just an example of an animal that has become photosynthetic.